if you think about your higher self, you will feel less of your lower self. Less body pain with more spiritual enlightenment that will take you away from the body, like the Buddhist monks, like other priests, in our history. They never felt any physical pain because they were somewhere else.
On today's episode, I'm talking with Sam Youssef, a clinician and researcher in the field of psychology, hypnotherapy, metaphysics, and physical therapy, about a multidimensional holistic approach that you can use to overcome pain and ultimately find a higher purpose in life. This one's going to get pretty deep and pretty existential, but if you're willing to listen to the end, I think you're going to get a lot of value out of it. And if you enjoy the episode, please subscribe to the podcast so you get notified of our future episodes.
You're listening to the St. Louis Pain Expert Podcast with Dr. Dave Candy, St. Louis's leading expert in chronic pain relief. Dr. Candy specializes in helping women age 40 and above to overcome chronic nagging aches and pains without medication, injections, or surgery, so they can stay active, mobile, healthy, and independent. Whether you're suffering from pain yourself or know someone who is, pain's a universal experience that affects us all, but that doesn't mean you have to suffer. Knowledge is power, and having the right information can help you or someone you love get on the road to recovery. On the St. Louis Pain Expert Podcast, Dr. Candy talks with other health experts from St. Louis and around the world to give you the information you need to recover, the peace of mind of knowing that you're not alone, and the hope that lasting relief from chronic pain is possible, and it doesn't require relying on pills, injections, or surgery in order to do so. So sit back, relax, and open your ears, mind, and heart, and let the healing begin.
Welcome to the St. Louis Pain Expert Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Dave Candy. I have with me here today Sam Youssef, a clinician and researcher in the fields of psychology, hypnotherapy, metaphysics, and physical therapy. Sam has been dealing with chronic pain from both the physical and psychological and spiritual perspectives for a number of years, and I'm happy to have him here to share his knowledge with us. So thank you, Sam, for joining us.
Thank you, Dave. Pleasure to meet you and pleasure to talk about what I believe in.
So there are a lot of psychological factors that contribute to chronic pain. And as we discussed before this call, also spiritual factors as well. Can you just explain to people who may be unfamiliar with sort of the holistic nature of chronic pain, how that all contributes into a person's pain?
Through my studies in metaphysics and holistic medicine and energy healing, I found out, that it concludes to one simple fact, that we are energies, units of energies. And we have the physical energy in us and the non-physical, or the metaphysical that we call it, which is not corporeal. It's just our soul, our mind and our spirit. So when we get a problem or an issue that is reflected on our body, that is not purely physical. There are other elements based on what I just said about the energy that we are formed of and created of. We are created from energy. Now we have, like I said, non-physical and physical. So when the physical starts showing some issues, we go right away and treat the physical in our medical system. Take pills, injections, physical therapy sometimes. But the issue is that we don't feel better most of the time, and that was the puzzling question. Why we're not feeling good? Why the pain is not going down? I'm taking my pills, doctor, I'm taking my pills. I have no issues, I'm taking my injections or my other therapeutic tools. I'm going to the PT and I'm doing my sessions. So what is going on? Now, that's not my question only. That's a patient's question. So that was that was the trigger. That was the reason I pursued the holistic approach. Now, let me just explain briefly, that the holistic approach is not something new or weird. It's like we're talking about thousands of years ago. It's been existing since the time of ancient Egyptians, going through the Greeks and the great Aristotle and Hippocrates, and all the other Greek philosophers. They talked about the same thing. And in psychology, we know about the issue of dualism, body or mind or both. Now, when we start taking things the way it is, treating the body and not forgetting the mind, and mixing both together in an effective, holistic, natural healing program, bingo, we get the best results. That's not what I'm saying only. That's based on a lot of recent research done in a lot of scientific journals that published that, and it's promising. It's very promising, Dave.
Now, when you say holistic, you've gone through a lot of different, say, tools, let's call them hypnotherapy and energy healing and spiritual and mental counseling, and now even getting into psychology degrees. How did you get from just being a physical therapist into dabbling down all those other paths?
I will just quote Aristotle when he said that philosophy is not the truth itself. No, philosophy is the science of knowing the truth. And I think that was my journey, knowing the truth. Started with the physical, medical part of it, which is the physical therapy. And getting my master's and my doctorate in PT have put me on the top of our field from the research and clinical part. And being there and not getting the whole full truth about the actual ideal healing. Now I started shifting and trying to find the truth in other parts. So I went through history and I found out that there are a lot of other tools that it's still available, natural healing tools that's still available. And unfortunately, it's just getting kind of commercial, and like when we talk about herbal, when we talk about acupuncture, whatever, it's just becoming businesses. We're not doing research on it. We're just using it to get the money out of it, as usual, in the health field. And that's not right. We need to do our research. We need to find out if there is anything promising and positive about these tools. And every time we go through a research program that shows some promising results, we have to immediately include this new tool, or like, let's say, ancient new tools in our healing program. So that was my starting going through metaphysics and getting my doctorate in spiritual counseling psychology, because when you talk to patients on the spiritual level, they feel better, without any kind of therapeutic touch. The therapeutic alliance between you as a spiritual counselor and your patient is very soothing. It's a positive connection, and that's healing itself. So adding to it the advances, now research advanced, in hypnotherapy, we use I'll tell you something that it's really surprising. We use the functional magnetic resonance imaging, and we recorded positive changes in the prefrontal cortex while doing the hypnotherapy sessions and the therapeutic imaging, because during the trance, we talk to the patient while they are in this trance state about positive visual imaging, wonderful places that they love to go to, that they are connected to it. After the session, the pain level goes down, sometimes from 8 to 4 or 3. So that's not bogus. That's not fake. No, it's true, because we recorded with the functional MRI the changes that are happening in the prefrontal area and the temporal lobe. So it's science. That's how we really need to do. That's what we need to do. We need to connect the old with the new. We need to get the holistic approach in adding more therapeutic tools to our agenda when we see patients. So when I will just get this example of getting in a war against an enemy, and you're having only one weapon with you, and you have a lot of other weapons that you are not using, and you're gonna lose the war. We are against the pain. And the pain is not an illness, it's a symptom. It's a symptom. This is the body language, Dave. This is the body talking to you that you have something wrong. It doesn't have to be in the body. It can be in your mind. It can be in your soul. So that is a concept of holistic that collected all of these therapeutic tools under the same umbrella for the best of our patients.
And that's, one of the hesitancies I think people have with incorporating the sort of medical, physical, or spiritual into clinical practice is that it seems too out there or not scientific. And it's amazing that you could see some changes in the brain with MRIs and things we'd consider like valid means of measurements from a scientific perspective.
That means that we have no excuse now, Dave. We have the science backing us in what we're doing. So now probably we need an open mind to have a revolution in our therapeutic healings for the best of our patients.
So getting more down onto a granular level for a person who might be suffering with chronic pain, how could hypnotherapy help them with some type of problems like that?
Before we decide to use the hypnotherapy, I always do assessments, and this is the right way of starting an effective healing program. So my assessment is different from a regular PT assessment. A regular PT assessment, we do the muscle testing, the range of motion, and so on, and we get the history, and we do the pain assessment too. That is a PT, that is a physical. Now I add to it the psychological and spiritual assessment. We need to talk to the patient, if we do this kind of program, about their own problems, about the thing that really bothered them, to dig more, to see if they have some psychological issues, some mental problems, some mental blocks, some schemas about issues that happened in their life before that they always, it comes back to them when they get the physical pain. So the pain comes twice, and triple sometimes, because of the anxiety that it's there already. We have other, the mind is busy with other things, depression, anxiety. So we need to clear up this thing. And then when we find out that, yes, there is an issue, grief issue, losing, a loved one before. And that's what's, since then, people sometimes, they say, I felt pain in my back when I lost my daughter or my son. So there is a connection here that we need to make a link between the mental pain and the physical pain. So they need to be included. So that's the time that we start using the hypnotherapy as one of the tools, plus the spiritual counseling too, plus the PT for muscle relaxation and pain management. This is the ideal kind of format or formula to deal with this issue. So the hypnotherapy, we use during the hypnotherapy different tools like progressive relaxation techniques, visual therapeutic imaging, and sometimes we do this before the PT sessions or after. It depends on the level of pain and the issue of the problem, but the combination is usually very successful.
And what are some benefits that a patient might notice from their end after a hypnotherapy session?
Right after the hypnotherapy sessions, most of the patients, they say that I feel great. I feel like I slept 20 hours. So usually we don't ask about the pain level right away, because if he's in this state of beautiful, nice relaxation feeling, we go with it. We do kind of a reinforcement to this kind of positive feeling. And then before they leave the clinic or the office, I ask them, so by the way, how is the pain? And when they get kind of surprised, with this question, oh, it's much better. And this is very, very meaningful that they didn't mention anything about the pain when you ask them, how do you feel? Which is something that unexpected, that they're coming to you for pain treatment. And here they are, they say they feel great and they're more relaxed. Now that doesn't happen in 100% of cases, happen like 70, 80%, a good percentage of patients, they feel this kind of a short-term good feeling. And then on the long term, let's say after 10, 12 sessions, the main issue that they came for, which is the pain, it goes down at least 50 to 70% down. That's not because of treating the main physical issue. No, because we dealt with the schema of pain, the way they are perceiving the pain, the cognitive part, the cognitive processing of physical pain. That is what I'm working on, or that's what we do work on as holistic clinicians, based on the hypnotic treatments and based on the spiritual treatment too. We dig deeper.
We were talking earlier about the higher powers and the people's greater purpose that they serve in the whole grand scheme of things. Can you delve in or explain to people listening to this a little bit more about how that existential nature and the higher purpose that they serve can actually help how they're experiencing their pain in their physical body?
Yes, and again, I'll start with scientific facts. My PhD in spiritual counseling psychology, and by the way, spiritual in psychology is existential. But when we step out of the psychology field, we say spiritual, which is kind of a little religious or theological. But the truth is existential and spiritual is the same. Now, what is the existential part of healing that I do apply in my programs too? It's the core of everything. A patient is a human being. And a human being sometimes is happy, sometimes is suffering from issues. But at the end of the day, he's lacking something big. That's what we call the meaning of existence. So if you ask anybody, like, hey, how you doing? I'm doing fine. What's the meaning of your life? Can you tell me what's the meaning of your life? Why you're existing? Now, this is a question. And simple question, supposedly, but it's not. It's most of people that don't know how to answer, and they answer it sometimes, with irrelated answers, because they don't know what's the meaning of existence for them. I'm living, I'm working, I'm married, I have kids. They always relate things outside their core. They relate to it. They're linked to an outside environment, an outside circle. They think that they are their job. They think that they are their family. They think that they are their bank account. They think that they are other things than themselves. No, I'm talking about you. What? How do you describe yourself? What's your existence? This is the core of treating every kind of problem in our lives, believe it or not. Why? Because this is the foundation of your life. This is the foundation of our life, Dave. It's knowing the meaning of our life, that means everything. And again, like I told you before, it's the most successful, effective step in the AA programs in treating addiction is the first step, the spiritual existential step. Why? Because the addict, when he sees himself from outside, based on the meaning of his existence, first thing, I'm wrong. What I'm doing is not right. That's the first thing. He is counseling himself. He is self-counseling. He is advising himself that this is wrong based on the meaning of my existence. So what's the meaning of my existence? I'm a very divine pulse of the divine spirit that happen to exist in a corporeal existence, a body. The body is not with me all the time. The body, I leave it. We're born and we die, and our body is not with us. We're something else higher. That is a higher meaning. This is what Freud called it, the super ego, the higher mind, the supreme mind, the Jesus-like mind. That's the divine part of us. So when we connect the patient to this part of him, the divine part of him or her, it makes a big difference. It changes the whole vision of life based on this new information that it's not new, but he's not getting it. He wasn't getting it before. So when we connect and put the link between the metaphysical and physical, he's going to have more control on himself on the physical level, because now we activated the pilot that is taking this plane somewhere, the master, the controller of the body. Because unfortunately, a lot of people, they think that controlling the body is by medications, managing the pain is by, I'm not saying they're wrong. No, we have to take the medications on the physical level, that we need to get the higher support, the core of this healing. You can take a lot of medications, but you don't believe in these medications, they will never work. We did a lot of placebo, studies, on sugar pills and medications. People that felt better after they used the sugar pills, because we convinced them that these sugar pills are more effective than the actual pain pills. That means a lot, Dave. That means that there is another level of consciousness that we are neglecting, we're not using. We can use this higher power in the human mind and spirit to change the dynamics of survival of the body and the mind. And it's great. It's a beautiful frontier that, that it's limitless.
Oh, someone listening to this, how would they use this information that they could start to apply if they're in pain and they've tried some of the traditional things you'd mentioned, like tried injections or surgeries or physical therapies or medications, and still haven't quite gotten the relief that they were hoping for? Where would they start?
That's a good question. But trained clinicians and professionals that they understand what I'm talking about, there are not too many in our health field or healthcare field, unfortunately, because of the resistance that we do get from the empiricist commercial side of healthcare. Quantifying what I'm talking about right now and putting in it numbers so we can get reimbursed from insurance companies doesn't work. So when you go to a holistic practitioner, I just want to tell people that are listening, if you need to make sure that the kind of experience that this holistic practitioner is based on practice and science. We can't go to somebody who is passionate about holistic healing and then I expect him to heal me or help me. It doesn't work this way, because first you need to have the confidence in this healer or this clinician that you're going to. So at least the experience or the previous experience of this clinician should include some scientific background. I'm not talking about degrees and titles. I'm saying that some kind of credible knowledge of what they're dealing with. So when I go to a hypnotherapist, I want to make sure that this hypnotherapist is a clinical medical hypnotherapist that got trained on knowing what are medical illnesses and what are non-medical illnesses and the difference between both of them and what's the best tool to use and so on. So, our system doesn't really, encourage or support these other alternative healings or healing tools. But, in some states like California and so on, they are progressive. So they are more progressive than other states. So they do have this kind of clinicians and healers. And it's just going back to the knowledge that these clinicians they have. And then, we choose based on that.
Being here in the Midwest, where typically on a whole, things are not quite as progressive. What advice would you give to someone who's seeking out more of a holistic treatment in maybe an area where holistic treatments aren't as readily available?
Well, in the Midwest, it's kind of hard, like you said. But Googling, and trying to find the right keywords, finding the best clinician or the right clinician for you is going to be a little challenge, especially in the Midwest, but it can happen.
And certainly if you have providers that you trust, they can make referrals to appropriate people as well if you know what questions to ask. Exactly.
And I think just to talk about it, to spread the word. That is what the early psychologists did in the early last century, in 1910 and 20 and 30, people like William James and Watson and B.F. Skinner, they talked about what they're doing. People that didn't know anything about psychology, they knew that psychology was just a quack and it's a spiritual thing, and, the evil work or whatever. But it took them 20 years to 30 years in America here. Of course, it was well known in Europe, especially in Germany. But they did work hard in the beginning. But once the people knew about psychology and they loved it and it became part of our culture, unfortunately, they made a big mistake and they just went back to the scientifying the psychology. So they shifted away from the philosophy and the religious roots of psychology. And they just went to the pure radical behaviorism, and the behaviorism is not everything in psychology. So hopefully that, we just start first telling people about the mix of this whole beautiful thing of psychosomatic approaches to treatments and the psychosomatic model and the spirit, mind and body model too. When the people, they understand this based on science, I think things will change.
Yeah, progression is never a fast process, but the more you talk about it and the more you get information out there, the quicker things will change. On that note, are there any resources that you could share with people who wanted to learn a little bit more about this holistic philosophy and body, mind, and spirit, or spirit, mind, and body, as you mentioned?
Like I said, starting with reading a lot about it, searching on it, getting the basics. I'm not talking about getting textbooks and references and reading it because that's hard. No, we're talking about searching for what's holistic. We hear a lot about reiki. We hear a lot about energy healing. So, step by step, like people, they need to know what are these components of this whole program, of holistic program. What is reiki, what is energy healing, and step by step they will have a whole full picture in a short period of time about how can they help themselves, how can they get this kind of spiritual counseling that they need, how do they work on themselves with cognitive behavioral programs, how can they get back their inner peace by just searching for the truth. You don't need to be a scientist to do that. No, when you just take the first step to know more about yourself and about your existence, bingo, you're starting your journey.
I can't think of any really better closing thought than that, is just really to start your journey and start searching for information. Are there any other thoughts that you'd like to share with people?
A final thought about what we talked about today is that we're not only human bodies. We are more precious than that. We are a great divine spirit that is existing in a limited time, 60, 70, 80 years on earth, that we need to really know the meaning of every moment we spend in this life. And I'll tell my friends, my patients, that they feel the suffering and the pain of chronic issues and chronic illnesses, starting from arthritis up to cancer. I'll tell them, don't ever lose the hope, because if you think about your higher self, you will feel less of your lower self. Less body pain with more spiritual enlightenment that will take you away from the body, like the Buddhist monks, like other priests, in our history. They never felt any physical pain because they were somewhere else. They were feeling themselves, the real divine part of them, the super ego, like Freud said, or the higher mind.
Well, thank you for sharing your thoughts and your information and knowledge. And I wish you the best of luck in your research and in your treatment.
Thank you, Dave. And thank you for giving me the chance to talk about this. And hopefully that won't be the last one. We'll talk again,
Hopefully so. Yeah.
Yes.
Have a great day,
Thanks,
Sam.
Dave. You too. Have a wonderful day. God bless you.
Thanks for listening to the St. Louis Pain Expert Podcast. We hope you've enjoyed the show. If you live in the St. Louis area and would like Dr. Candy's help to find a solution to your pain, visit our website at stlpainexpert.com. Email Dr. Candy at dave@stlpainexpert.com or call Dr. Candy's clinical practice at 314-941-3970. If you're listening from outside the St. Louis area but would still like some help, feel free to contact us to learn more about our virtual health coaching. Regardless of where you live, please share our podcast with anyone you know who would benefit from learning more about pain and what can be done to relieve it. And don't forget to subscribe to our podcast on iTunes, Google, Spotify, or your other favorite podcast platform so you get notified when we release a new episode. Thanks again for listening, and we hope you'll enjoy us again soon.